You know how sometimes we all return back to a place of comfort when it comes to, well, really doing anything, I suppose, in life? Well, that's really the story of today's build because I have decided to spoil myself by allowing me to return to a couple of areas of comfort, or comfort zones, I should probably say, when it comes to building within The Sims 3. And I'll explain that in just a bit here. Now, for those of you just joining me and just discovering my little corner of the internet, my name is Michael, and I want to welcome you to Sovereign Gaming in Life Sims, the YouTube channel where I build worlds, lots, and share my thoughts on video games in the life simulation gaming space. Now, the comfort zones that I am talking about is really more so me building more than just one story as like one story for a building, something that has multiple levels to it as we continue to build out Sim City. I don't know why, but I just think that bungalows, they challenge me in a way that it's just not my cup of tea. It's not exactly a comfort zone for me. But the problem with that is that I've got a bunch more bungalows to actually build within Blue Water Village as we continue to build out the suburb, balancing it with the other urban neighborhoods. Now, the other comfort zone that I am happily returning to in this episode is the use of neutral color palettes for the interior design. There have been examples on my channel where I have deviated away from a neutral palette, and it has paid me in spades, honestly, because it's allowed me to really stretch my imagination. I mean, Goth Manor is obviously an example of that, where I think Goth Manor actually is just a masterpiece. If I'm going to toot my own horn there, but also the townhouse build for the cat family, just trying to lean into more of those cat lady elements. I felt like that was another example of a build where deviating away from a neutral color palette was something that was very beneficial for that build. So yeah, there have been examples on this very channel where deviating away from it has actually worked out in my favor. And there are also examples where it hasn't. And and even though like it didn't work out entirely as how I envisioned them, I still stand by them. I still think that they're pretty good. But yeah, I really wanted to build a two-story structure because I feel like the two-story single-family homes within Blue Water Village is really what's going to amaze players and to amaze anybody that is downloading my world and my lots and just kind of inserting them in as we go along here. And that's really why I wanted to get started on a two-story home, is just because I feel like it just breathes so much identity into the Blue Water Village suburb as a neighborhood and a part of Sim City that separates itself in terms of its own personality. So that's why I was really excited to actually get this one done, because I think the identity really revolves around the two-story structures as opposed to the bungalows. But yeah, it's also a comfort zone, and I was really happy to to stop challenging myself, really, I suppose. As with all of the Blue Water Village single-family homes, I want this home to be built on a foundation that has a basement. So the very first thing that you guys are going to be seeing me do is fiddle around with these stairs. And the stairs are very important because, like I've mentioned before, but it does bear repeating, I suppose. When you place a set of stairs to the basement, it just goes directly onto the ground terrain level. And when you try to place a foundation on top of it, that's where things can get a little messy if you do it the other way around, being that you build your foundation first before actually placing the stairs. So yeah, the workaround that is placing the stairs first and then putting the foundation on top, but you got to figure out where you want those stairs to actually go. I've also explained it before that you have to also build the basement part of the landing so that you aren't deleting the walls on the stairs, because because if you build it right up against the walls, and if you wanted to expand the basement later on, that's where you can run into some issues where you suddenly have to, like, you can't place those descending walls. I know I've explained this before in the last in the last single family home build that we did, but it kind of does bear repeating just in case there is someone new here that is sort of struggling with that aspect of The Sims 3. So yeah, what I do is I just build a landing in the basement that is large enough to include all of the walls that are attached to the stairs when you drop them in. And as you'll see me do later on, I actually end up deleting parts of those walls, but I still got the descending walls on one side of the staircase that leads into the basement, which is what I wanted at the end of it. But yeah, stairs are a huge issue, and you guys are going to see me really struggle with these stairs just a bit. In fact, I cut out a ton of footage because I wanted some L-shaped stairs, because I just feel like L-shaped stairs are just better. They just look better. And for a 2-story structure like this, and with the way that I intend 2-story single family homes in Blue Water Village, I want them to feel large and over the top. And so I really wanted L-shaped stairs, and the L-shaped stairs that come with the game, I think they came with the Island Paradise expansion pack. That could be wrong though, but the Sims 3 franchise does offer L-shaped stairs either in the store with one of the expansion packs, and I just feel like those stairs are just too skinny and you just can't do a whole lot with them, so I don't really like them per se. I've seen them get used in other Sims 3 home builds, but I just never really gravitated towards them myself because they aren't opulent enough, and they definitely weren't opulent enough for this particular build. And so one of the design features of a home that I think is very important, I should say, is the actual staircase, because it is a huge play. It's a very busy area, and I just think that stairs in general are very decorative to begin with. So I didn't want to compromise on L-shaped stairs. And the way that you have to do L-shaped stairs in The Sims 3 is, again, it's quite complicated in that you have to use the constrained floor elevations false cheats. But I actually used a guide, and I've used a ton of his guides, and he's a huge YouTuber on The Sims. I completely forget his name, but I will pop up his his thumbnail for the guide that I did use. It's a very simple guide, but it's a very effective guide, because I find that sometimes that people over explain things, and I am guilty of that myself. So it takes one to it takes one to see one, or however that saying goes. And yeah, so I used that particular guide to help me create these L-shaped stairs, because it's been a while since I've done it. I've done it in the past. I think I've even done it in some of the past builds. Actually, yes, I've definitely done this in a past build, the Crumple Bottom Chateau build, in fact. And I'm kind of laughing at the fact that I forgot that I used it in the Crumple Bottom Chateau build, because this house totally takes inspiration from the Crumple Bottom Chateau build that I did way back when, as my little representation of what a Crumple Bottom mansion would look like in the Pleasant View neighborhood and all of that. And when I built that structure, the Crumple Bottom Chateau structure, I always had it in my mind that it was always going to be like an upgraded version of one of the Blue Water Village houses. And that's exactly what I was creating this particular house in mind with, is that this is the downgraded version of the Crumple Bottom Chateau. And so, yeah, that's where a lot of the windows and the form really comes from, like with some of the bump outs in the front there, and just with the layout of the windows, having some of the taller ones on the bottom with the shorter ones on top. I found that it created this nice effect where it just kind of helps to make the structure seem taller than what it is. I contemplated actually putting in a third floor just as a dummy floor just to add in more windows, but then, I felt like I was getting a little too carried away with it. So I decided not to do that at the end of the build. But yeah, a lot of the inspiration here came from the Crumple Bottom Chateau. I even used like sort of a similar color scheme. I made it a lot more gray I made it a lot more gray on the sidings, and I feel like the exterior and the color schemes for all of that really came together, and it really looked nice, and it felt like that proper ode to the crumple bottom chateau build that I did way back when. It does feel like a downgraded version of it in a lot of ways, and that was the total intention on my end here. When it comes to the rest of the Blue Water Village neighborhood, I am kind of contemplating whether I want to explore different styles, like doing like a modern single family home build. You know, now that I've said it out loud, I probably will end up doing that, because I feel like even though I love this American suburban style of build going forward, that I can deviate a little bit and put in some different architectural styles going forward with Blue Water Village, and it won't feel completely out of place. Like, it will still all feel like a cohesive suburb. And I mentioned it in the bungalow build that I plan on using a color scheme on the exteriors that is reminiscent of all of the colors of the ocean, and gray is certainly one of the colors of the ocean under the right light, I suppose. Like, it's kind of like a gray with a little bit of blue in it, so that's why I'm kind of getting away with it, and maybe I'm making up too much excuses here just to fit it into the theme. But you know, the gray and the white really looked well, and it kind of looks a little bluish. It's like a gray with some blue undertones to it, so I think I can get away with it, kind of like a stormy or like more, you know what, I'm not even going to make any excuses for it. It's gray with a little bit of blue, and pretty much like anything in between like blue and green is kind of what I'm going with some whites here and there for the exterior home. So it's all going to look cohesive. But I definitely don't want to stick to one architectural style per se. And for the next couple of builds in Blue Water Village, this might not be the best example of it, because on this particular street, I've got 4 plots of 30 by 30 lots to build out. And I'm kind of thinking that I want to keep the architectural style sort of similar for this particular street, but then having like a couple of pops of different architectural styles within this side of Blue Water Village will certainly be something that's welcomed, and something that helps to keep things feeling fresh. In fact, like, my intention with Blue Water Village is to develop suburban homes that do feel over the top and huge. I really want them to kind of encapsulate like the feeling like this is a Texas suburb where the houses are just over the top and there's just plenty of space. Even though there isn't a whole lot of space in the backyard, there's a whole lot of house that you can really use to your advantage here. I really want it to be that apex of middle class idea of suburbia, despite it not really existing in this day and age. Not like it used to back then, but I am not opening that can of worms for a discussion. But I really wanted to really capture the highest high point of American suburbia within Blue Water Village. And so in order to do that, I have to make the houses as large as possible, and for the lots that they're on, while also making it make sense, and also making sure that they're not entering the realm of mansionhood. And even if you compare like this house to the bungalow sitting next to it, like the bungalow looks pretty huge, and that's because of the roof. And that's really kind of like my secret weapon when building out these Blue Water Village homes, is that whether it's a 2-story or a bungalow build, as long as the roof is huge and pretty tall, like I can, like, it just makes the rest of the structure just seem that much more taller, which, I mean, it technically is. I mean, this is nothing new that I'm exploring here, but I really wanted to make that a part of the standard with Blue Water Village. Like, you're just surrounded by these big, beautiful homes, whether they're bungalows or 2 stories. It just feels really luxurious for a suburb. And it also contrasts like the urban living of SimCity quite starkly, I suppose. I mean, even with some of the condo builds that I was doing, even though they feel spacious, like their footprint in game is so much smaller in comparison to this. And it's just like how we're, you know, I even question myself, like how I was able to use the space that I had so efficiently, and then I do a build like this where I'm doing nothing but just like spreading out, and it's like, it's kind of a mind fuck even for myself sometimes. And like, even in real life, it's hard for me to wrap my head around like how people are really able to, you know, live in some really excellent confined spaces, but at the same time, like, it also blows my mind how folks, you know, are able to fill a really huge space. So yeah, that was kind of the psychology kind of going into this, and like trying to explore the other end of the urban builds that I have been doing. And that's another big reason why I kind of wanted to start on Blue Water Village as a build out for the neighborhood while I was doing the urban builds as well, is because not only will it help balance it, but it just helps to keep things interesting and fresh for me anyways. But yeah, I totally intend to make Blue Water Village feel, you know, luxurious, huge with the single family homes. I mean, this home is technically taller than the townhouses that sit right behind it. And the townhouses house a lot more people. I know I mentioned this in the bungalow build episode, but it just kind of shows the irony that even though Blue Water Village is very reluctant to add density to its own town center, the suburban houses, the single family homes that that make up the majority of it, are actually taller than the multifamily homes that they are putting in their town center and all that. So yeah, I just like to show that kind of irony and that kind of storytelling there. I did give this build a wraparound porch. I wasn't initially intending on doing it, but then I just kind of felt like it fit, so I just gave it a wraparound porch. I didn't put anything on the porch. I didn't even put in a rocking chair like I did in the last one, because that would just be too much copy and paste for my liking. But yeah, I gave it a wraparound porch just for the heck of it, I suppose. I suppose I could maybe add stairs to like towards the garage door side, but whatever. I'm happy with the way that it turned out there. The garage, again, by the way, is another 4-car. Like, I've added in 4 vehicle parking spots to, again, like, allow that suburban lifestyle to kind of play out in your Sims 3 world. So, because in my head, I imagine that you would likely want to have a house like this if you've got a family. And with a family, your kids get older, they grow into teenagers, maybe you have more than one kid, so each of them gets their own car. That was kind of the psychology that I had in the back of my mind when building this out, is like how a family ages up and out and all of that. I do actually want to hit on something that's very important, and I'm pretty sure that I cut out a lot of the footage on this, but when doing those L-shaped stairs, sorry to bring it back to there, but when doing those L-shaped stairs, there was something that I had to compromise with, and that was creating just like one square of dead space behind the stairs. And when doing L-shaped stairs, like, it's honestly best to do it on a wall that's, it's best to do it on a set of walls that really act as the corner of your home, as opposed to something that's in the middle of your home. Like, you want the exterior, the walls that the stairs lean up against, to be actual exterior walls, if that's making sense. I hope it is making sense. But what happens is that when you go to the second floor to actually try and build walls around it and stuff, like, it'll cave in and it'll try to, you know, be the same level as the half walls that you had to adjust and all that. Again, if you just watch the tutorial that I will be posting up again in a thumbnail, you'll see exactly what I mean there. I'm sure that I have completely cut out the footage because it was just like taking up so much of my time to figure out how to get the floors not to cave in, and then to get the floors on the stairs. There was just like a really strict limitation on the game mechanic with those L-shaped stairs that I eventually just had to block off a like 1 square of space in that L shape that I couldn't build on for the second level there. And honestly, like, I never really noticed it after I moved on from the disaster of those L-shaped stairs. And yeah, the basement stairs were also kind of giving me issues because of that. And there's a lot of footage lost that I just simply decided not to show you guys because it was so tedious to try and actually get the stairs to a place where I thought that they were serviceable and something that I actually liked. So yeah, there's a little bit of a missing story there, but you guys, I honestly don't want to spend, you know, the next 20 minutes or so just talking about stairs. So that's why I had cut out a lot of that footage when working with those L-shaped stairs. I'll probably do L-shaped stairs again, I'm not gonna lie, because they look great. And I'm just gonna be getting better at them as I, you know, for some reason seem to be doing with all of my Sims 3 builds. I seem to actually be improving a little bit of skill here and there. So yeah, L-shaped stairs are a pain in the butt. If you are going to do them in a corner of your house. Don't do them in the middle of your house like what I was doing, if at all possible, or else like just be prepared to compromise and like block off a single square of space where you just can't use. I ended up making the ground floor underneath that space a pantry, so it's not even like a space that Sims are like in and out of, or the players are really in and out of anyways. So yeah, you can make some pretty decent compromises here and there, but if you're not building it in the corner of your home, if you're building it in the middle of your home, just be prepared to actually make those compromises. I noticed that when I'm building, the entrance and the living room, I suppose, really sets the tone for the rest of the build and for the rest of the home, and it all just kind of revolves around that. Especially like when it comes to hallway spaces and all that, as I like those hallways to actually just be a continuation of the themes or the interior decor choices of the living room, or I guess the great room in this particular case. So that's why I usually always start with like, you know, layout of course, but then I move into like a living room and the entrance and start out the decor there, just because yeah, it sets the tone for the rest of the build, for me at least. When it comes to like the floor plans and deciding what I prefer between like an open concept and I guess a closed concept, or a corridor concept, I suppose, for a floor plan, I'm still kind of developing a relationship with it. I know in the past in this series even, like I might have even like expressed a preference for one or the other, but right now I'm really finding that I am really gravitating towards a corridor concept, and that is something that I considered when developing out this particular build as well. It's just really what I wanted to have, either open concept or a corridor or a hallway concept floor plan going forward. And you know, looking back on my builds, most of my builds have honestly been hallway concepts or corridor concepts. So there's definitely a preference there, whether I am aware of it or not, because I seem to always just kind of gravitate towards those kind of floor plan concepts. And you know, I have to be honest, like I do like an open floor concept when the opportunity is right. And I guess I just really haven't seen like the correct opportunity to really explore the idea of an open floor concept, but I'll definitely make a note of that going forward, because I think it would be especially important to include open concepts and corridor concepts in the builds going forward, especially within Blue Water Village, so that people have a bit of variety as to what they want to choose between. But yeah, I really like the idea of hallway concept floor plans, because it helps to divide rooms off from each other, and you can kind of give each room their own little bit of personality. And that's what I'm really enjoying right now with those corridor and hallway concept floor plans. Even in the apartment builds that I was doing with, I guess one could make the argument that the investment condo was actually a closed concept or a corridor concept, but the family condo that I built was an absolutely something that was indeed a corridor concept without hesitation, that I can say. But yeah, even with that, I found that the hallway space was really something that I really enjoyed, and I really liked the idea of designing pathways for Sims and all that, just kind of keeping it all in the back of my mind, overthinking it like I usually do. So yeah, I really like the room separation aspect of corridor concept quarter concept floor plans, and the pillars in that divide the living room from the dining room kind of presented itself as a unique opportunity to sort of add in that bit of room separation. And so yeah, like the dining room and the living room of this build, I guess it could be considered like an open floor concept. Like if the pillars weren't there, there would absolutely be an open floor concept, but because the pillars are there dividing the two spaces between each other, it helps to like add a unique way to divide off one room's function over another. But yeah, I do end up redoing the rug in the living room. So if you are seeing the rug there and it's just kind of bothering you, well, don't worry, because I absolutely end up redoing it. So yeah, that rug gets redone and it actually looks a little bit better. I might have to redo it again for the rug because I'm not entirely sold on it, but I'll have to figure that out whenever I come back to this particular build. There was something else that I had decided to add into this house on the ground floor, and that was to add in like a true office. And I really wanted to add in a true office space because it does feel a little more luxurious, or I guess a study is the more proper term since this is a residential lot here. So adding in the study was something that felt a lot more luxurious. It really helps to really tell the story that there's a lot of space within this particular floor plan and that you can have your own private little office if you so choose to. I almost considered making it into a bedroom, if I'm going to be completely transparent with you guys, and that's only because I like the idea of having like a nanny suite or, you know, a granny suite on the ground level so that, you know, an elderly person has access to all of the amenities of the property within one floor. But I decided not to do that. I really wanted the study there. And when I was building out the study, it almost felt like therapist-like for me. It almost felt like I was building a study for a therapist. That's what I mean to say. And yeah, the couches and the lounge chairs and all that were certainly something that really kind of helped to bring out that feeling, even though there is traditionally no psychology career or therapist career in The Sims 3. There are mods out there that actually do add that career into the game. And but yeah, I really wanted an office here to just really kind of show that this is a really big luxury property, which is why I gave it some glass doors right off the hop so that it isn't a completely closed off space. It actually lets a little bit of light in. The only thing that I would change about the office going forward is maybe trying to find an opportunity to add in a window, but even then, like, I feel like adding in a window might throw it off just a little bit, but we'll just kind of see whenever I get around to editing the lots in Blue Water Village, which isn't for a long time, and that is honestly a blessing in disguise because the more time I seem to take away, like whenever I walk away from a project like this, I find that I'm a lot clearer on what the vision needs to be. So the edited version of this lot will certainly be something that I will look forward to seeing. But let's talk about the kitchen here. The kitchen was something that I used a few references for, and I didn't like one reference for it, so I went with another, and it really used a lot of natural tones, and I was really leaning into the neutrality of it, like having that kind of a neutral color palette, which is the entire house. Like essentially I allowed the neutral color palette to really dictate what the kitchen was going to look and feel like, and I just highlighted some minor natural natural elements in the kitchen with some of the woods and some of the coloring there, just to kind of bring out some of the richer browns and whatnot. I'm not entirely like sold on the kitchen as well. I think it could do with a redo. It kind of needs to be just a slightly bit bolder here and there, but at the same time, I really don't mind it. I like the shape of the kitchen at the very least, even if I don't necessarily like the color of it. And the shape of the kitchen is, again, something that is meant to be like oversized, large, and it feels absolutely appropriate in terms of scale as you would see in real life in single family homes that are much larger and found in a very affluent suburb. And so I really like the massing of the kitchen. But if there is one thing that I kind of notice about the house in general is that despite it having a lot of windows, for some reason it kind of seems a little dark to me, and maybe it's just me not lighting it appropriately, but it just kind of feels really dark. And my focus when using this neutral palette and applying it to this particular home was to try and make it feel as airy and light as possible. And in order to do that, you really need to let a lot of natural light in. So, you know, there might be an opportunity to edit it just a little bit going forward. But again, like I mentioned before, that's not for a long time. And by the time I actually get to this, I'll probably have a very clear solution in mind as to help brighten it up and make it more airy than it actually is. When I am designing kitchens, I'm always taking into account like where Sims are going to be eating. And I like, on one hand, I am sort of reluctant to add in seating to the islands because I know that Sims will usually try to eat on the island as opposed to going to the dining room and eating in there. So like my workaround for that, just based on sim behavior, is actually just to try to keep the dining room as close to the kitchen as possible. When I was doing play testing for this lot and for the Crumple Bottom Chateau, and for all of my lots that I play test for, but those two in particular that are standing out to me right now, Sims would sometimes eat in the kitchen island and sometimes they would eat in the dining room. So it just kind of depends on whatever pathway they choose. I don't know how they actually algorithmically choose where to eat and where to sit and eat, but when I was play testing this lot, sometimes the Sims would actually go to the dining room to actually eat their meal. So that was kind of nice to actually see within the game here, and it just kind of like reaffirms the importance of play testing for me at least. And with this particular layout, like unfortunately I had to put a hallway between the dining room and the kitchen itself, so it does make the dining room trip just like a little bit longer than what Sims would likely choose. So most of the time they're honestly going to be eating on the island, but sometimes they'll eat in the dining room. You're just gonna have to struggle with the gameplay mechanics as I do on some of the times whenever I'm playing, which is very rare these days. Let's move on to the backyard, because you remember that pergola structure in the restaurant bistro build that I was doing? Well, I got my revenge and I was able to build a pergola structure here, and it actually looks nice. So I was very happy to get that revenge on the game mechanics with that, with the build here in the backyard. One thing that I will make a note for myself is to maybe extend the pergola structure over part of the wood path leading up to the fire pit and the sand pit there, because that could actually help to elevate it just a little bit more. And speaking of which, I really loved adding the fire pit in that little sand pit there. It felt very chic and it felt very contemporary, and with the sand texture that I use to paint over it, which is, you know, the graded sand and all of that, it really helped to just elevate the look of the backyard so much more, and I really enjoyed it. And, you know, as a bonus for players that enjoy gardening, I also added in a garden as well. I may have to go back and extend the dirt beds on those, because, okay, this is just a me thing, but when I was doing the graveyard build way back when, I used a space of 2 tiles and I painted those as like a light dirt or whatever, the same color of dirt here, and I just used it to mark graves. So it kind of looks like there's a big graveyard to me, just subconsciously based on the other design choices I've made in previous builds. So that's why I'm going to probably extend the dirt beds so that they are fully lengthed out there, because right now to me it just looks like a bunch of grave plots, and that is not the intention. Maybe you could just throw Olive Spectre to live in this house. Maybe that's the real compromise here that I'm missing. But anyways, I move on to actually working on in the basements. And, you know, I've already explained the choice before in the bungalow episode that I am not making the basements match the floor plate of the ground level. And honestly, I'm really loving that fact. It's just giving me, I'm really loving that choice, excuse me, because it's just giving me a lot of flexibility in terms of building out the house, how I want the form to actually be, and not overwhelming myself, most importantly, with a basement floor plate that is matching the ground level. Now in real life, I believe that basements are larger and that they, for the most part, match the actual ground level of the entire home for a single family house. But I don't have to do that in The Sims 3, and I'm really loving that choice that I am continuing to make, because I can just build out the space that I want for the basement. And honestly, like for single family homes, I don't want a whole lot of space to build out in the basement anyways. Like I just want an extra room in there. In this case, like I've put in a media room in there as well, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And you know, maybe a storage room, and that's just kind of it. I don't need a whole lot of space in the basements for these single family homes. Like there isn't a whole lot of new activities or anything new that I can't achieve on the ground or the second level in this case. And even with the bungalow build that I was doing, like the basement on there might be slightly larger than this one, but it isn't really achieving a lot of new gameplay that players wouldn't already have with the floor plate on the ground level there. I hope that's kind of making sense there. But yeah, something that I've been very careful to differentiate, and maybe this is something that I need to deviate away from just so that there is more variety in my builds, but I have been very intentional with separating a media room from a great room, or I guess a living room. For me, the TVs just don't, like, they detract away from the greatness of a living room or a great room, which is essentially just like a place to sit. But in The Sims 3, it could also be a great place to throw parties, which is why I usually put in a stereo in the great room there, is just so that it makes it easy for players to host parties and stuff. But anyways, yeah, I've always been very careful to separate those two functions from each other. Even when I was doing the townhouse builds for Blue Water Village, I made sure to separate the living room from the media room in those builds, but that's really only because I had enough space to actually do so, and when I'm given that kind of space, I will actually take advantage of it. So that is really something that I have been taking into consideration going forward. I just find that a TV is just too distracting. Like it distracts you from the views, for example. It distracts you from, you know, the social aspect of gathering together in a space. And so I find that, like, if your fireplace, for example, is the focal point, that it should be the only focal point of that room, which in this case is the great room. But yeah, I really like the fact that I've been separating out great rooms from media rooms, and I think that players will kind of enjoy that gameplay going forward, but it's not going to be something that I will completely commit to going forward. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to point that out to you guys. There is another storage room that has made its way into the basement. I did it from the bungalow build, and I'm doing it again here. I don't have a rhyme or reason as to when I want to add in a storage room. I think I've explained this in the bungalow episode, but whenever there is an opportunity to put in a storage room, if it makes sense and if it's something that I really want to do, I'll just kind of place it in there where I see fit. I didn't do a whole lot with it in this case. I just added in some boxes. I did even less with this storage room than I did with the last storage room with the bungalow build. And that just kind of goes to show like how unimportant they are to me, but whenever they show up, I feel like they're just a reflection of real life, and they are essentially like just set dressing as well. So that's something I've also kind of kept in mind. They're not very important on the list of priorities there. When it comes to decorating on the walls though, the wall art is really a struggle, and I'm finding myself struggling to find like wall art pieces that are unique to the property from other properties, I suppose, and also like suitable. The wall art styles that I have access to, like you'll see me place a couple of them, like some of them come from Roaring Heights and other DLCs, but they all seem to like either have like a specific theme to them, whether they're art pop or they're a bunch of these old style posters, which I do enjoy as a style. Like Art Deco, I suppose, is the style there. But yeah, like the wall art is a struggle. There isn't a whole lot of modern art out there. And I honestly think that if the EA could go back in time and release some sort of a stuff pack, like an art stuff pack, would have just been great, where there's just a ridiculous amount of wall art and statues and such, because Right now, even though I have a lot of these store items installed in my game, I am still kind of struggling with decorating on the walls in ways that make sense, at least. I honestly think that we know by now that my bathrooms all follow a specific formula. And honestly, like going forward, this might be something that I may want to explore when it comes to the different forms of the bathrooms. I honestly love the forms of the bathrooms that I use. Like I still love them to pieces and I stand by them. However, it is kind of getting a little repetitive and I've got a lot more lots to build. So I am going to try and challenge myself to actually start to evolve on the form of bathrooms, or at least try to gain some sort of a repertoire with them. The form that I like to use, I'm sure that you guys have noticed, is that I like to expand the walk-in shower portion by giving it its own little like blocked off little space there where you can actually like walk in and all that jazz. And I add in the windows and the wall to ceiling door there. So like it all follows the same formula and I've been doing it for a while now. So yeah, it's time to add something else. It's time to learn a new trick, I suppose. If I am going to grow as a builder, I suppose like that's one of the things that I've got to do here. So yeah, the bathrooms definitely follow a formula. Same with my master bedroom, actually. Like it still follows a formula as well. And so I'm just gonna have to do a little more research. I'll have to watch more Sims 3 build videos out there just to get more inspiration here and there, because when I find a formula that I like, I tend to stick with it, and when I stick with a formula that I like, I tend to overdo it. So you know, I've got to pivot a little bit here. I got to add more to what I can do. The basement bedroom that I built, I know I just talked about like trying to keep like older folks on the ground level so they have access to all of the amenities, but the basement room is honestly like a lightweight elder room in of itself. Like if you wanted to do generational gameplay, you might want to stick the like the grandparents in the basement if that is your speed, because the bedroom there just kind of matches it. The only reason that I decided to make it one of those, like a more elder friendly room, I suppose, in terms of the decor, is that I just wanted it to be different from the bungalow, because the bungalow I had like a teenage room in it, and I could have easily done the same thing here. I could have made it a little more like rustic, like geared. I could have designed it to be more suited for a younger person, but I just didn't want to do the same thing that I did from the bungalow there. But yeah, it would totally make sense to have like an adult or a teen living in the basement there, because they're right beside the media room, which is a lot noisier. And so I imagine that elders and older people are really looking for a quieter life and wouldn't necessarily want to be right beside the media room where you would be socializing and all that. That's kind of what I think anyways. Like I'm making a couple of assumptions here, just kind of based on what I know on some generalizations. So the assumptions may not actually hold up, but here I am, just kind of making the basement bedroom essentially an elder room, which might conflict with the media room for the reasons I just described, because it's a quiet space right beside a noisier space. And if it's not made for the right person, they're not going to enjoy it. Anyways, I'm kind of overthinking it here, but the ultimate reason why I made it the way it was is just to differentiate it from the bungalow basement room that I did in one of those last builds there. On the second floor there are 4 bedrooms total, and I decided to, you know, kind of appease to, you know, family gameplay here. There's the boys' room, which might be more geared towards like a teen or even a child, and so I just gave them some objects and I guess activities to just kind of interact with at their own will. I added in a TV, and I was going to try and find like some sort of a video game system to add in there too, but it was just like expanding the space too much, and there are really no great small coffee tables to use. Like there's this one square one that I used in the family condo as its leading coffee table, but even that was just like too large for it, and I really wanted to add some video games there. But instead I just put in the beanbag chairs, the TV, and the boys' room, and just kind of called it as it was. Of course, I gave them a computer, so you know, they have a lot of things to do within that room of itself. Like, I imagine that kids would be watching TV anyways, and yeah, the TVs are are pretty old. They are definitely stuck in the early 2000s there, so I was happy to put it in there anyways. For the girls' room, I imagine that they would be younger than the boys, so I made it a little more childlike, giving it those kind of castle themed rooms there. I actually decided to use the default color palette for the castle bed and all of its matching furniture, just because it isn't a color palette that I normally play with, being a pink and a really light or almost mint green. So I decided to just kind of allow EA to like influence the style for the girls' room, and I was also kind of bored at the time, and I just wanted to deviate a little bit away from all of the neutrals, so I just allowed the girls' room to be a lot more childlike, and I just allowed a lot of the furniture to do the heavy lifting for me. Like, I wasn't doing a whole lot of recoloring in the girls' room, and it was just kind of coming together really quickly, which I really appreciated. Now, the nursery is something that was a bit of a struggle before I understood the identity that it needed to take on. It has an attached playroom to it, which I feel is very unique for this property, and probably not something that I'm ever going to replicate in future builds unless it's by accident. And that's exactly how the attached playroom kind of came to be within the nurseries, just sort of by accident. There was both the struggles with the L-shaped stairs, and also with me trying to find a place to outline the master bedroom. And so that just kind of led into some awkward spacing here and there. But then I sort of realized that it could just be like an attached playroom that you can add in there. And so I decided to just lean into that a little bit, because I have sort of seen that in larger houses and all that. And yeah, so the nursery has an attached playroom that has those windows there, and I decided to just try to offer more toddler skill objects to use. And you know, in reality, when looking at this build, maybe I could have turned it into a specific reading nook per se. The rocking chair that's in there really helps to kind of encourage cross-generational gameplay. Like, maybe you have an elder reading a book while the toddler is interacting or playing with some of their objects there. So that's just like one of those kind of cute moments that I thought was really something that I really wanted to encourage. But maybe the playroom could actually serve as a like a hardcore reading nook where you just kind of chill and relax and all of that. So that probably will involve some bookcases to be added and whatnot, and it's an edit that I am absolutely open to doing. In the hallways, I just kind of, in the upstairs hallway, I should say, I did kind of add in a small observatory. I might actually delete that altogether, because I feel like it's just kind of taking up space, and it might just be crowding up the second floor hallway just a little bit. But yeah, feel free to comment below with what you guys think on that impromptu observatory space. I may decide to delete it just to keep the lines clean and all of that within the second floor. But yeah, feel free to comment below. I'm kind of curious as to what you guys have to think about that. I'm leaning towards deleting it, but I might just keep it if a strong case is made to keep it. Like I mentioned earlier, the master bedroom also follows a formula that I have really been doing for a lot of my builds. So again, this is probably just a sign for me to add more to my repertoire and to my skill set in terms of designing out bedrooms and floor plans and all that. But you know, today is not that day. However, this time, like with the master bedroom, I was actually able, something that I did prioritize actually when doing the floor plan of the second floor was to add in like a much bigger closet, like an oversized closet, something that you can properly, well, not properly walk in, but something that is very oversized, because I really wanted to create like more of like a glamour closet, something that's just a little more opulent than the standard walk-in closets that I have been doing for a lot of my other previous builds. In fact, this glamour closet is more similar to the penthouse glamour closet that I did a few episodes back when I was building out an entire penthouse. And when it comes to like penthouses and this build here, like they should be on par with the different amenities that they add. And so I added in a glamour closet by just making it a lot larger, and that's also partially why it influenced the rest of the second floor layout, and why that kind of led me to creating an attached playroom to the nursery and all that, is because I really wanted the master quarters to be larger than the bungalows, but smaller than a mansion's. I hope that's kind of making sense here, because when we look at a mansion like the Crumple Bottom Chateau or Goth Manor, the master quarters there are massive, and so I really wanted to kind of find that nice medium between the bungalow master quarters and this one here. So that was really where the glamour closet kind of came to be. And the way that or it could probably be called a beauty room as well. And the way that I differentiate between the two is that the beauty room has some floating furniture in there. So in this case, I've got the island just kind of sitting in the middle with some makeup and some jewelry on it. And it just, like, the look and feel that I was going for is I was trying to make it more like a department store, and that's usually my go-to when it comes to making these kind of glamour rooms or glamour closets and whatnot. And so yeah, that was the approach that I wanted to make here, because it just feels a lot more opulent, like you're paying a lot more money for this house to get more features and benefits and amenities and all that. So I really wanted to capture that within this build here, and to really like make the case that this 2-story house is worth the money, because you get a lot more house and a lot more space and unique spaces and all that than you would with the bungalow, which is really how it should be. With the master bedroom, I used a lot more blacks and whites, as opposed to relying on a neutral, as opposed to relying on that certain spectrum of the neutral palette where it just kind of has those off-whites and slight browns and all that. So I just kind of made a stronger choice by making it more black and white, but I also used similar, I used the color palette from the rest of the house in certain areas just to at least tie it in together. So yeah, at the end of this build, this house ended up costing, if I remember correctly, 275 simoleons, whereas the bungalow costed about 175,000 simoleons. So there's about 100,000 simoleons worth of a difference there, and that makes sense because you have an entire floor of rooms to really build out and decorate, and whereas the bungalow just has the ground floor and a little bit of a slightly larger basement, I suppose, than this 2-story home here. But yeah, I really felt like this house did everything it needed to. If I was going to rate myself on it, I would give myself a solid 8 out of 10, whereas with the bungalow, I was giving myself like a 7 or a soft 8 out of 10. This one, I give myself a solid 8 out of 10 for this 2-story build, and I just feel like I can credit that a lot to the comfort zones that I was playing in. But there are some touch-ups that need to be added here and there, and I've kind of already explained them in the episode. And even though I am talking about switching up my formulas or adding to my repertoire for bedroom builds and bathroom builds, I'm probably not going to switch those formulas in this particular home if I go back to edit it and all of that. So that is something that I won't take into consideration going forward. This series is certainly not over yet. Like, I still have a bunch of more lots to play, to build out. And in the next episode, we are indeed going back to Midtown, but for the very last time, we'll be going back to Midtown, or what I assume to be the last time, because the next episode that I will be putting out will actually be the Midtown edit episode, where I'm going to go back and edit all of the lots within the Midtown neighborhood just to kind of tie it all together. Right now, as I am recording this episode and all of that, I haven't even recorded that episode, so I don't even know what the pacing is going to be for that, but I feel like I'm going to be starting with that restaurant getting rid of that pergola structure from hell, really, and then just kind of working my way back in a clockwise fashion, starting from south and going to the north lots and all of that. So that's kind of the plan for the next episode, is just to kind of give all of those midtown lots the final polish that they need, and to just kind of keep it moving from there. There are lots of edits that I need to make when it comes to those different lots there, and I am excited to just kind of put a period on that neighborhood to actually consider a neighborhood complete. And where we go beyond that will be something that will be explained in the next episode as well. But I'm going to give you guys a heads up that I will likely be taking a break after the next episode. And the reason being for that is that at the time that I am doing the audio recordings and the video editing for today's episode, it's in August, and I will be starting school up again at the end of August, and I don't know how my schedule is going to look from there. So I kind of want to give myself a little bit of breathing room before I continue on with the SimCity builds and all of that. And I'll explain more on how I want the channel to evolve at that time as well. So I'll definitely be giving you guys more of a heads up in the next episode. I might even do like a channel update video. Who knows what I want to do. so yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, if you've been enjoying this speed build series, then feel free to like, share, and comment on this video. It helps me with this channel, and if you haven't subscribed already, feel free to subscribe to keep up with the speed builds of the SimCity world that I've got going on here. I'm very excited for the future and where I'm going to be taking this series, even as just like a fun little hobby to do outside of school. It's something that I am still very excited for and something that I'm still very passionate about. We're coming up to a year actually as to when I started out this project way back in Creator World, so that will be super interesting when we where I'll see where we're at when we get around to that year mark, I suppose. Well, anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have yourself a wonderful day.